we're just going to give it another couple of minutes to Paulo to connect. And then I'll do the introduction. I'll pass it to Juan, and then we'll get started with Paulo's lecture.
You're online.
We're just waiting for Paulo.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm here.
Ah, you're here? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. I would like to thank you all for being here tonight. Welcome to the first lecture of the series that we have organized as part of the Design Research Workshop that I have the pleasure to lead in collaboration with CEU University San Pablo from Madrid. I would like to express my gratitude to Juan Antonio, to Marta from CEU for organizing this event, and Paulo Flores to accept our invitation to share his experience and knowledge with everyone tonight. I'm just going to pass it to Juan Antonio from CEU, and then we'll introduce Paulo. You have to unmute yourself, Juan Antonio. Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
So good evening to everyone. My name is Juan Antonio Fuentes. It's an honor for me to be here representing CEU University for this workshop, an institution which I would like to highlight its compromise, making the students be part of the active life of the institution by having the freedom to propose new activities and bringing new ideas to the table, which will benefit the whole university community. I would also like to thank Marta Lopez Gorria, Assistant Director at the EPS CEU San Pablo, and for sure Alejandro Garcia Ladea, who's Senior Architect at Saha Hadid Architects, who've been actively involved to make this possible tonight, and for believing in me since the very first moment I proposed them this initiative. I hope you all enjoyed this amazing lecture, and thank you so much to Paulo Flores for giving us part of your time, and it's a real pleasure having you here tonight. So thank you to all.
Okay, just gonna briefly introduce Paulo. Paulo received his bachelor degree in architecture from the Ibero-American University of Mexico in 2003. He gained his master's degree in parametric and digital design from the Architectural Association Design Research Lab in 2007. Paulo joined Saha in 2007 and is currently Associate Director and lead of the Front-End Design Research Team, the C cluster, responsible for developing Saha's creative approach and repertoire to early conceptual stages of project development. The C cluster carries Saha design DNA and is involved in all new projects and to ensure innovation and uniqueness for every client. Paulo is currently developing as a design director the winning competition entry for Shenzhen Science Technology Museum, as well as the project Finsbury Square in London, among many other projects, I'm sure. Previously, he worked on two of the film's major aviation projects, Beijing Daxing Airport in China, Beijing, completed in 2019, and Navi Mumbai Airport in India, as well as the AI Wakrac Stadium in Qatar, among many other projects. Since 2011, Paulo has lectured at the AA, Texas Tech University in Austin, North Industrial University, as well as the Wall Art Museum in Beijing. Since 2013, he has been invited reviewer every year for the AADRL Design Research Lab and also both Zaha Hadid architecture courses in Yale and Vienna year reviews. Without further ado, let me welcome Paulo Flores. Thank you, Paulo.
Thanks, Alejandro. Thanks to everyone from the invitation, and I'm sure that your workshops and the students are quite excited to get to learn most of the tools that will be part of what I'm going to show today that is part of the work. Yeah? So if I start just to quickly brief introduce, so I joined the office now almost 15 years ago, and I was attracted to join Heidelier Architects because obviously the level of projects and innovation and the design culture that the office has proved for so many years was something that immediately attracted to me and wanted to be part of this experimentation, constant innovation, and the drive for always trying to change the architectural parameters of the built world. I think we work at multiple scales, and we put that same energy and same passion of innovation, no matter what the scale is. If it's part of a city, a new master plan, if it's a bridge, a stadium, or even just a chair, even a cutlery, I think we always try to bring what's new, what could be innovative, what could be changing the paradigms of design. Today, I'm going to walk you through the culture and the innovation that we have had in the office and how the design agenda has started from the early ideas from Zaha and how we have maintained that coherency and innovation throughout all of these years. Yeah. Obviously, just a very quick introduction. Obviously, the office was founded now by Zaha almost 40 years ago, right? With this idea, right, that there should not be an end to experimentation, which that sort of principle is what carries the strength of all the work till today. Now with Patrick and a larger group of architects, we have continued to carry this energy and this mindset to develop into now being close to 450 architects joining in the office from all around the world, but all of us with the same energy, the same passion to keep innovating, to keep working as a collective design brain, a design school, to keep evolving and bringing that passion to all of our work. But just early on, where everything started, the challenge of the graphic space was something that started calling the attention of the work of Zaha. Through all of these paintings, moving away from just the understanding of plans and sections and trying to transform not only the graphic space, but also the spatial quality of all of the buildings that would be emerging in the early years. One of the most famous statements from Zaha that why would we stick to an orthogonal plane if we can do all of the degrees that exist in the world? So this idea of distortion of perspective, multiple perspectives, and this unique shaping of elements that started with early on just how could this be extracted to be understood as pieces of furniture, interior design. They started evolving into bigger interior buildings, and then the buildings started to become part of an evolution of the field in the city, and how this city could start, this building could start bringing those dynamic elements and describe them into these unique sets of geometries as one of the first big projects, Vitra Station, was built. I think at this time, the office was known when I was a student, and I was always challenged by my tutors back then when I was trying to understand the designs of Zaha back then, that this was only an art school. It was not a proper architectural office. More buildings started coming and carrying that same inertia and that same passion of going from models to drawings, to understanding the dynamism of just sketching, how that could transfer into a more material world. Again, with that painting, again, this new graphic space, this was creating ripples all around the architectural world. So this kept on evolving, and again, another built work came out that started to show that the studio was not an art school. It was not a graphic place. It was one of the most innovative places for architecture, and the work was creating that dynamism, that understanding of the lines of movement that were becoming the buildings, how the buildings were occupied, how you would move through these buildings became what is now a trademark of a dynamic architecture that we maintain in the office. I was always attracted to the early work and trying to understand the scale of things and how changing the idea of a single line, a single gesture will start becoming, as you change scales of projects, that you could actually occupy these structures and become part of those spaces. Yeah? Which is one of those projects, the Science Center in Wolfsburg became that idea, became how could we lift the museum and create that the actual structure of the building is inhabitable and will be driving the circulation to the levels of the museum, perforating that space and then creating a unique composition to the project. This is another phrase, so it's in Spanish, but it's commonly asked. What do you do when the engineer tells that they cannot build this project? And the usual answer from Saha was, you find a new engineer, right? Which was a challenge in my first competition when I joined the office, right? It was a proposal to create an extension to a historical building in Antwerp, where the most rational idea would have been, we can put the building, the extension on the side and connect simply at the ground floor, right? But the idea was, again, to challenge this condition and say, why don't we just float the extension on top of the existing building? I started working on this project, trying to understand how we could make this feel as a lighter element, making this more of a diamond shape that would just seem to float over the existing building. But then again, the question of how can we support this element became one of the biggest challenges. So how can we use one main feature? We only wanted to have one single structure outside the building to minimize the impact and show respect to the historical building behind. It was a challenge. I think we tried every single configuration, as you can start seeing, but nothing was feeling right. The scale, the proportions were not working until we had the idea to break that structure into two, obviously making the qualities of the structure much more difficult. How could this maintain coherency? But we felt that this was creating this unique space in between the existing building and the new building. It was a space that no one wanted, that no one required, but we went through it. We submitted that, knowing that that was a very radical move, that it would be very difficult to float the building, break the structure, and see what happens. We submitted, this is the final competition model, and to our surprise, we will end up winning that competition, which at that time, we looked at each other in the team and we said, maybe this would have been the one to get second place because it was such a hard task to make this building float. But you can see the completed building maintained the initial qualities that we had from the competition. Going to the site, and I think it was only until then that I started realizing that actually this is happening. We are making this possible. A building that could seem unfeasible, it was actually getting built and being finished. And this is us at the opening ceremony, seeing the building floating on top with fireworks and us standing in that in-between space that no one wanted, but that we believed in and we went through it with it. Then after that, I continued developing a lot of competitions. For example, this is a dance and music center in The Hague, which we wanted to, again, treat the line within a volume, and that volume could carry 2 concert halls and 2 theaters, how we could create the expression as flowing as music into that facade. We got second place on this competition, which at that point, I thought that that was a positive outcome. But then we had another new challenge, a much more higher standard competition for a museum right next to the Bird's Nest in Beijing. Would have been one of the biggest museums in the world. That at that point, it was a competition that went for almost 2 years, which I thought that will be the longest competition that I would have ever done. Unfortunately, we also got second place, which at this point I thought, this is it. I'm not going to be trusted anymore to keep doing competitions in the practice. So to my surprise, I was then assigned and entrusted to design the competition for the new Beijing airport. This would be the first major terminal that we were going to develop. So we really had no knowledge prior on how airport would be. But luckily, we had a team of specialists, of airport geniuses from around the world, engineers that work with us, team with us from other companies. They all came to our office. We made a floor to just focus on this airport. and that it will prove to be a challenge, right? When people asked me at that time, but how are you going to design an airport? You know, the only answer was, we don't know. There is no way of knowing what's going to come out. And indeed, it didn't come out easy. We tried every night to design what could be an airport. And again, trying to challenge what an airport was. All of these ideas, day by day, were being knocked back by our specialists and experts in the field of airport and engineering as this won't work, these are not viable, right? We kept going back, we kept trying, and with the fear that they would just tell us, you guys don't know what you're doing, you know? But on the contrary, they engaged with us. They sensed the energy of innovation that we wanted to bring. They helped us to address and to really, with very precise rules, assess each concept, each scheme, each sketch that we were producing daily, and started guiding us to what we thought would become a completely new typology. But all of this didn't work. None of it was taking us where we wanted. Everything was failing. We kept on going. We trusted our team, which they came with an idea of what could be the only way to make this airport work, which was this sketch that with us, they developed, that we then transformed into a clear idea of organizing the terminal, creating a center of light, a center of activity where everyone will come in. And then we will have these large roofs that will radiate around that center, bringing ideas of light into the space, of lightness, providing these large spaces, large fan structures that will make a unifying configuration along that center. So from the early ideas that didn't go through, some of these concepts that were there started to migrate into what could become our proposal. So we kept on developing, we started narrowing it into this set of geometric constraints, clear ideas of navigation, making that the airport was functional, allow us for intuitive moving through the spaces. This sense of mega columns with these elements of light were guiding you into that center. And from that center, taking you out into the rest of the terminal. This center of light that then expanded all the way to all the tips of your gates where you will start boarding the planes and becoming this clear concept of not only planning and function, but a very expressive concept of an airport navigation. We went through multiple phases of design, but the concept was able to remain strong. As much as we had to start changing, shifting, reducing to how many piers we had to provide, the concept of the centralized center of light and these radiating lines with the big roofs was continuing to carry on and make the strength of the project as we went along. So after almost 3 years of competition, which this now became the longest competition I've ever done, we were awarded as the winners of it. And this was our last proposal. Then started to become the built reality of the scheme. As you see from our renderings to the construction progress, we started seeing how these simple components of the sketch of a roof, the refinement of the geometry, the integration with the structural principles, the development of bringing all the technical aspects, not only of geometry, of systems that have to be there to make the airport work, to make it technically viable, came on developing and allowed us to then, that the initial idea, the initial principle of structure and space were maintained as the construction was developed. These mega columns bringing light into each of these petals became one of the main features of the space. So you can get a sense, that's me standing next to 1/3 of the column, and you can see just the size of the members of this structural element. As the structure was developing, you start reading the clarity of that central space, that center of light that you will follow with the light to start taking you to your destination. This is how the airport was a month before opening. And we are happy to see that the strength of the principle, as much as it went through multiple iterations, is there. It works, and the users now respond to these architectural principles of space, form and lightness into the terminal. After that, then we had the chance to join the competition for the Olympic Stadium in Japan, where again, this was a mega structure that had to connect with multiple zones of the city into a small site. And again, bringing that idea of how we could use the size of the structure to create a bridge that could connect each side, that the spectators and non-spectators could really inhabit that structure, to walk around, to get exceptional views of the city while moving across that edge of the structure and discovering new spaces, new ways of experiencing moving through a stadium, moving through a city. This was our proposal for the competition that we successfully won in 2013. Then we worked through 2-3 years of developing the project. This was the final proposal a month before the structure would start arriving into the site to start beginning the construction. But then politics came into play and eliminated fully our stadium. And what you see now is not ours, unfortunately. But luckily, we were in similar times developing another stadium for the World Cup in Qatar, which was, again, learning from what we're doing in Tokyo and migrating some of those ideas, becoming it local to Qatar, and making a unique composition of these shells of structure, shells of sails that will resemble the boats that they have in Qatar, and make this stadium a reality. This is how it was finished, and now it's waiting for the World Cup in 2022. Then trying to experience and to test always not only the form, but how could the form use different types of material. So this is testing a smaller stadium here in England, how we could use timber to really blend into the environment, to make a much more soft material, much more sustainable material, but that again creates a clear expression of this dynamism, this coherency of form that will be tying with the seating inside, the lightness of the roof, that will really blend into this more green sites, not within immersed in the city. So we won this competition, and we're hoping that this will start getting built in the next couple of years. It was around this time when the office kept on growing. We went very quickly from 100 when I joined to 400. So this was at this point where Saha and Patrick really thought that there was so much energy happening in the studio. There was so much growth, so many ideas that really Patrick and Saha always appreciated the young students coming in, bringing new technologies, bringing this naive intuition that we could work with those ideas and maintain a group that will carry the sense of innovation, working alongside all the rest of the architects that we have been longer in the office, that had the experience to bring this naive idea sometimes to a conceptual, viable approach to the projects. So it was around those times where really the technology of digital design was going to a climax, where everything seemed possible. We could manipulate surfaces, we could create spaces unimaginable, and we started going through a transformation of the design, of the evolution of the digital design in the office, where as we went along and this came further developed, like in the example of the Aquatic Center for London, the treatment of the surface and the understanding of the geometry with structure started coming together to really make that the surface will really create space, will really define the structural parameters and help us create a building that had the qualities of expression, the form that it required, and using that form to optimize the structural spans and to create unexpected spaces for an Olympic and diving pool. Using this wave of the roof to separate softly the diving pool from the regular pool. In a similar way, the use of the surface into occupying now 3 different programs within one building. This is the Heidelier Center in Baku, where it has 3 theater, a library, and a conference center within the same space. And that's why you start reading these 3 forms within one surface. And again, the learning how we could use standard technologies of building to achieve these designs. So using a very standard space frame could allow to take this surface transformation into resolving the quality of the proposal that we had. You see, moving around the building, it transforms into different expressions, different ways of understanding that there is something different happening as you move around the building. The connection with the ground, lifting up, and again, that treatment of the unifying surface to create and develop these highly dramatic, highly dynamic spaces on the inside. And similarly, trying to bring that coherency into the auditorium, again, this sense of the surface wrapping around and developing and integrating at the same time all of the technical requirements that are needed for a multi-purpose auditorium. The digital tools not only helped us to create and to design these forms, but also to really technically address how we can resolve, simplify, rationalize, and optimize the geometry, optimize the amount of panels that will need to be curved, how we can flatten some areas, and how these techniques help us to really make the reality of our buildings, from design to fabrication to construction. That have taken us to even more and more complex geometrical forms to be developed. This is a project in Korea, in Seoul, where again, these very free-form elements start to match, and using technology like this multi-point machine to really form every single panel by a machining process that allows that the forms becomes to perfection. So it works in this machine as the one that you can just push your hand. This is all driven by the computer that analyzes the panel, makes the form of each panel, and each panel gets assembled in position on the site. A lot more of research in fabrication that I'm sure when you hear Shaji from Code, he's going to go much more deeper into this, but again, bringing the innovation of fabrication into a constant aspect of our design and our understanding of what we want to produce. In a similar way, misusing technology has always been a driver for our design and driver for innovation, for understanding cities, how we can map and really simulate people moving through a site, people experiencing a site, and how we could create this transformation of a field and move this into an understanding of a city, from a small villa to a high tower to a cordial building. How could these technologies of gradual transformation could bring us into developing a coherency into our designs? You can see, using these elements with clear parameters, how can we really understand and have a very subtle way of understanding a city, a new way to move through a city. It was a proposal that we did for a master plan in China, when again, we didn't design just 8 towers that were required. We developed a whole set of principles and rules on how every single tower could have a uniqueness to it, a characteristic, but they will all resemble as a family of towers, a composition that will feel that it's integrated, but at the same time giving to every user a new experience as you move along. This idea of fields distorting grids kept on driving us to create and explore new ways of integrating into different types of urban development. From different scale, this is a hotel in Hainan, where we tried to create from a single gesture of roofs, of a network of roofs, how we could integrate circulation into villas, into hotel rooms, into large service apartments. How could this start giving us this network field idea that will carry on similar principles of uniqueness as I described before, but at the same time carry the program that needed to be allocated to the distinct requirements of the project. This has been going ahead for a few years, and we're hoping that it will start going into construction soon. Another idea with a similar scale for a university, how these volumes could start linking and fusing together to create a relation between buildings, larger floors, large courtyards, but again, maintaining that dynamic volumes fusing into each other, opening up, closing where you need to protect from the sun, opening terraces. That one we unfortunately didn't get to develop it further, but then this is one that got built that carries those same ideas. This sense of objects that start fusing to each other, creating a relation within them that will activate the city, activate the space, and create a new mini urbanism within this set of buildings, not only from the higher levels, also from below, through a sense of skyline that will connect visually all the levels and all the composition of the different volumes joining together. We use the tools as well more and more to understand the environmental parameters, how we could shape our buildings to really open up towards either important views that we want to maintain, block itself with direct sun, with harsh environments, how we can again keep informing more our design elements into these, using these tools as they keep on developing to make stronger our designs. How can we make from a smaller field of components that we start creating, how we can start shading orientation from the facade. When you start moving around it, that shading just becomes a window that will open up the space. We tried this into one of our key projects is in Capsark, where it was again this field, these cells that were formed in a way that would allow hot air to cool the space through a courtyard, but protect from the harsh sun into those interior spaces. Tying this together, you see the cells responding to one orientation, opening up towards the north to really allow that this coherency while responding to all of the environmental parameters will make this not only a pleasant building to be in, but also an exciting new configuration of this cellular field of components coming together. Some of the construction images. This was finished around four or 5 years ago. And similar principles into a tower. How can we protect from sun direction from one specific location that will then derive into opening up towards the north while maintaining a complete different expression of the tower as you move from side to side. One will become more open and one will appear to be fully enclosed, but in a way it's just orienting your views, protecting from this type of environment. We continue to develop within the cluster these sort of principles of design as we keep evolving with new geometries, new parameters to work with, new cities, new cultures, and how we keep on one after the other bringing this same sense of principles of experimentation and innovation into all of our designs. We start like every other design, just analyzing what our requirements are, what we need to enclose, but then we go into a creative explosion of trying to really maximize all of the ideas that everyone could think of. It becomes a very non-hierarchical design principle where all the ideas are put on the table. And sometimes we find something that could be a unique and unexpected idea that we could be attracted to it and then put all of our effort to develop it. So this was for a ferry terminal when the idea would have been just to do a simple roof that could house the cruise terminal below. But we had this idea to create an object floating in the center, a strange feature that will allow that could maybe operate a different program at night, that you will want to discover. You will want to go in and see what can happen inside, while the rest of the terminal will still continue to operate normally. So as you see, we embedded cinemas, exhibition spaces that could be changing with different seasons, different event conditions that the city of Miami could bring into this terminal. We didn't win this competition, but we kept on trying and understanding that this could be an idea that then developed into a museum. How we could really bring maybe not one, but multiple of these objects to become galleries, unexpected spaces that everyone will want to visit, maybe have a glimpse, slicing this horizontally as well, to start seeing what is happening inside this space and create that drive of people to keep coming back to see this surprising element. We also didn't manage to get that one through, but then again, that idea carried, and not even with our team, with a different team in the office, that idea kept on evolving, kept on being tested into a performing arts center, and then that this one was won the competition. So hopefully this idea will now will be developed, and we will see it built in a few years. Other ideas, when we have worked in stranger contexts, we had to do a museum in a silo. So we wanted to really test how we can create, cut, misuse, make columns into these spaces, and bring a new language, a new expression into the tectonics of that space, into that building. Unfortunately, this abstract idea didn't materialize into a competition that we didn't win, but we kept on developing it, we kept on trying, and then for a project for a concert hall in Munich, we made this much more rational, but maintaining the same qualities that we had envisioned, not only from the outside, but also you will walk in, these cylinders, this floating silo will start bringing light, and again becoming this strange feeling of lightness into a very heavy principle of design, and migrating those ideas into the concert hall, where again these silos will be enclosing the balconies of the space, bringing a different texture, but again unifying the same principles of the design. Then I come to one of our latest projects that we have been developing. When again, sometimes we also have to submit not one, but multiple ideas into a competition. So in this case, we had to submit 3 different concepts for a museum that we wanted some of them, at least 2 of them, to respond to criteria from the site, that we could really respond very differently to a site that was next to a city and then soften out into a more landscape condition. Using similar parameters to understand the form, how we could really rotate the form, make it more solid in one area to really block away the noise from the station, and really could open up more into the park. So this was the option that they selected, and we won this competition 2 years ago that we have been on developing. And again, you see how we can enclose more like a bullet shape, enclosing towards the station, but then breaking down into these very thin layers of terraces that will start creating a more interesting play with the soft landscape. Here you see the contrast towards the city that is quite intense, sitting towards the building, and towards the other side, we have nature coming into the museum, opening up with a large space that would blur that boundary from outside into that mega atrium of the museum. So we wanted that it's not a form that remains on the outside, that it will have a sense that we're pushing in from the windows, not only windows, but full balconies that will then come and be experienced into that mega space of the building, creating this large atrium where you can start seeing glimpses towards the galleries, not only from the sides, also from the ceiling, and also coming from below. Right? We could then use this mega space to put spaceships, satellite, and everything that a science museum could house. This is more views of that space looking out into that garden on the back, while again always getting a hint that you want to go into that gallery, you want to see what's happening inside, and getting views from the spaces outside into that space, and connecting again with the site, with the nature. Standing inside these galleries that are pushed in, these feature galleries, and we could cross in multiple levels, this sense of glass tunnels, like you can always experience the art, the installation, the exhibition, not only from one viewpoint, but from multiple viewpoints to create a new experience of the art pieces being displayed. So again, you see that sort of strong asymmetry that we wanted to bring into this building, that responds into an elegant form that can also then be replicated to incorporate an IMAX that sits outside the building, so that the two of them keep making this dialogue with the city, with the landscape, with the park, and respond in the best way possible to the city of Shenzhen. So in this one, we are starting now construction, and hopefully it will be done in a couple of years. Again, another project that we did was very difficult and unique site. How we started to understand the proportions of the tower, how we can really move away from a standard central core tower into an offset tower facing the park. But then we couldn't land the tower because we had to maintain these free connections on the second level. So how we could lift the tower and make it appear that it's always connecting with the surrounding. Maybe softening it to create this idea of a beautiful piece, a beautiful object that we wanted, and the client also wanted us to make this proposal into. Bringing that sense of purity into the object was one of our initial criteria to develop the proposal. Then again, bringing more verticality that could match with the dense vertical city of Hong Kong into that tower, into that volume. And then trying to pinch the tower in certain locations to create unique features for the offices inside, maybe terraces that could just spill out and not only perceive the city in a different way, but also give this character to the volume, this uniqueness, this object-like principles as a very pristine, soft object floating in the city of Hong Kong. So we won that competition also a few years ago, and now the construction has started into this sort of building that maintain all of these properties. Again, you see the softness of the volume floating above these bridges coming, that the public could cross this side, while the nature really hides a very transparent lobby. But it's feels that you are inside the building, but at the same time you are surrounded by the nature that sits within the site. I think the last project that I'm going to show is one of the latest ones that we have won the competition. This is for a twin tower concept in Shenzhen, where the site is very unique. It sits along this green axis, and then it carries on a spine of cultural buildings that will run through the site. We have this interesting intersection of public program that, again, it's a very unusual project. The city was developing this scheme, and they wanted to bring a lot of public activity into the tower. So we started thinking initially really into what could make this tower unique, or if we could really bend the idea of the park as if it was just coming into the tower, as this idea from sci-fi movies where the cities are in rings, or if we could really create that sense of a city wrapping into itself and becoming this vertical city of a continuous space with the park. So we kept on developing this idea and seeing how these two towers could appear to fuse at the higher levels, but then as you start coming down, they would blend into the ground. They would create this seamless connection with the park that you would naturally just be moving in the nature and then suddenly appear into the base of the tower. Yeah? pushing that energy from the two directions of the site, really, and creating that expression of this new pair of towers for the city. So this is how those ideas developed. You see how that landing of the tower, which has been always been an area of research for all of us in the company, how this will become really expressive into that condition, really using a very large set of cascading steps that will open up and discover retail opportunities, restaurants that could really start bringing you into that space as you keep on navigating it. And that sort of blending, that scooping into the tower, that connection into the park, while creating this new step landscape, bringing you into the multiple levels of the lower areas. How then again we could really use these linking bridges of the towers to also want people to understand what's going in there, right? What's happening. And again, having the public program that the city was requiring, use these spaces to have large exhibition space, have more of a unique opportunity for a floor plate that will be usually expected in a tower. Yeah? That will be also activating the city during the day, to use for projections at night, and always become a lively new element of the city of Shenzhen. Yeah? This was the image that we submitted for the competition, and just a few weeks ago, it was released as a winner entry, and we are now starting the development of the project. Yeah? So this is, I hope you enjoyed a quick journey into our thinking, into the world of Saha, that we all continue to maintain that passion and excitement into all the work. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paulo. Thank you for the amazing lecture.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, very much appreciated. Like, it's a whole journey from the very beginning until now. And we will have now a series of, like a brief Q&A. I will start just asking you briefly if you could perhaps like tell us a little bit more about the beginning of the C cluster. Yeah. Like how was that first year of the C cluster? How was the beginning? And then if you could also explain a bit, like in your view, how the form finding process have developed from the paintings and the paper models to all the kind of more computational tools that we use now in the office.
Yeah, sure. So I think, as I said, it was at the time where the office was going through a rapid growth, you know, that there was so much ideas going around that it was a good moment to really create a group that will be able to carry or really bring all of these ideas together and not lose any of them, right? And we could then started to really go evolving from one idea to the other. Right? So I think it was initially was a small team. It was only, I had a team of 4 people that started working directly with Saha into these concepts. Then the more we developed, the more that this team started becoming larger, being able to cover more projects. We're really always working in collaboration with the rest of the office, but it allows us to maintain that going from one concept to the other, that we would carry that energy, understanding what failed, what was the element that could start making that concept work in a different scale, different city, or a different program. And I think that sort of inertia what has been carrying the work, and that's why you see that how we work, you know, is that going through multiple iterations of design, really exploring every single possibility that we could have. And that sort of has allowed us also bringing a lot of new and young architects into the work, and working together with the more experienced, even more technical architects that we have in the office, allowed us to really make these ideas possible, make the work evolve, and be constantly always a driver for innovation, you know. And not only us as the cluster in the office, but also how we collaborate with everyone, and how everyone also brings new ideas. We take them on board, and that has made that circle of continuity and of expression a successful sort of addition to the way that we work for many years ago. I think on your second question, it was mostly that the concept that that the project always wanted were very difficult to just draw in standard convention, right? So it was always the intention to understand how could those be expressed, you know. So that's why we moved to a lot of model making, a lot of abstraction, a lot of creative ways to describe geometry, right? That ended up being just washing paint into a piece of paper, right? To really get that sense of not only a dynamic space in form, but a dynamic sense of moving through it. That's why it was always, in a way, ahead of its time and always wanting or needing the use of digital technologies, right? You wanted all of these distortions of perspective. We're trying to understand a complex object from all of the different ways of you could see it. And that's why there was multiple drawings, multiple iterations, you know, that could only be experienced through model making. Then when the digital tools came, it accelerated all of that process, right? We were now able to visualize immediately what we wanted to achieve. There was no longer a need to draw one perspective, then draw the other one. We were just making everything much faster. And that's why the sort of explosion of creativity became faster and faster, right? As we kept on being more fluent in the tools, it allows us to really connect more the mind with the computer and really start seeing these new forms, these new principles of structure and space to keep evolving. So, and the more those develop, the more we can make informed decisions, make a careful assessment of the geometries of the form, and allow us to create unique pieces of architecture.
Thank you, Paulo. I don't know if anyone, there is a little bit of lagging with the YouTube channel, so it's still a bit behind. So in the meantime, it will be good if any one of the students would like to ask any questions. Otherwise, I will keep asking questions. Have many.
I would like to make a question, actually.
Go ahead.
In your opinion, which is the most valuable feature we can say that a student or a future architect should have to try to develop some of this kind of creativity in some way?
Well, I think obviously the one aspect that should never die is that idea of keep pushing yourself, keep trying to always make something new, trying to always understand what has been done before, learn from it, and then keep on studying. Right? I think failure will always be just a way to understand what is not being successful yet. Right? So I think that motivation to keep going, to keep experimenting, and to also to trust your intuitions, while to absorb the knowledge from the people that have run that road before. I think that's the way to always be at the top of your game, right? And at the top of trying to keep on proposing new things, keep on learning from technology and what the world is requiring. I think those criteria, there's not any formula, right? There is not one sort of criteria of design. It's just the will to keep exploring, you know? That's why the words that Zaha used to say, there's no end to experimentation. I think that is the key, right? And that is why we are always wanting to have new ideas coming, you know, that will keep us evolving as a practice. Otherwise, we would just try to create one type of design and be very hard to move away from that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else would like to
I have a question too.
Okay.
Yes. Hello. How do you guys, because those forms are really original and the ways you have to do things, how do you fight against constraints? Because I see, for instance, my uncle here in Brazil, he's a builder. And I know from stories, he told me that every time he tried to do something a little more different or something, he encountered a lot of constraints by the government or anything. You can't build this or this or this. How do you fight against that in order to do those things?
Well, it is a constant sort of a struggle that we face, right? It's how how we can make those requirements not blocking the design, but becoming a fundamental part of the design. Right? How we can take the building technologies, into the way that we can actually make these forms happen. Right? So I think it has been a constant learning experience from us as we go from different country to country. Right? How we can really convince the industry to try new ways of building. Right? Sometimes successfully, sometimes not successfully, but it is a constant challenge, and the only way is to keep trying, keep showing the client that we believe in what we're doing. And luckily, we're very lucky that the construction industry, engineers, fabricators, they have always been very supportive for our work, and that has allowed us to, because they are the first ones to jump, and really they want to test how they can build this new material or use their material in a new way to form our building. Because I think with that process that started and is still now in furniture design, right? And then how that sort of small idea started evolving into the built environment, right? I think that it's been over 40 years, right? That we have been testing the industry, right? And starting with standard ways of building, but using slightly more different ways of construction to allow for these forms to happen.
Thank you.
Hello, Paulo.
Hello.
I wanted to ask you about how close do you think the relationship between the form and the function will be in the future?
Well, I think it always has to be completely linked, right? I think just the functions of buildings will keep on changing, right? They will keep on of adapting with the culture, with social parameters. I think it's just also for us as architects to really understand how we can propose new ways of using spaces now, right? So, for example, how office space might change now after all of us working from home. Well, what is the new way of working in offices? Is there a real need to be going to your office every day anymore, right? I think those sort of buildings will need to be challenging that. Or how do we now make the office buildings are more of a gathering space, of a meeting to understand the culture, to socialize, to interact face to face, but maybe you don't need to be sitting on a desk every day, right? I think those sort of questioning the program, questioning the function is what will make the buildings to continue to look different, but always responding to the function that they need to be. Yeah? I think if we detach function from form, then you end up with useless buildings, right? So it's more try to create how to challenge the users to discover a new way of utilizing space. Yeah? And then we try that a lot in museums, right? How we can challenge artists to curate the space if it's not a standard box. Right? Some like it, some don't. And that's just giving us learning tools to keep on exploring how we could create new ways of understanding function into our buildings.
Thank you, Paulo.
Hi, Pablo. I wanted to make a question. I wanted to ask if organic architecture is going to be a part of the future, or could it be in the future some kind of thing that it's going to disappear, or is it going to be really the future of architecture?
Well, I think I wouldn't call it organic architecture, right? I think as construction technologies evolve, softer forms are the more natural way of analyzing structure and of creating space, right? I think orthogonal buildings were just more of a constraint of the construction industry from the early days. I think now optimizing a roof will always be more optimal as a shell structure than as a flat slab. Right? So I think there's no reason why we'll have to go backwards and negate technology. Right? But it might not become an issue, right? When we start 3D printing buildings, building with drones, building with robots, I think there is no reason why. I'm not saying organic forms, I'm saying just more forms that will respond better the space requirements, that will respond better to structural conditions, right? I think that's going to be where we need to keep on heading, right? And not trying to do a style for a style. I think that's something that we don't want to do, right? I think we want to respond and optimize and be in a way much more linked to the requirements of buildings, space, and structure. Yeah?
Thank you.
Paulo, a question. Do you guys work with people from different disciplines? Let's say sociologists or biologists, or is there a more close thing like engineers and architects and artists?
Well, yes, I think it depends on the project, right? But we always try, and we always make sort of very unique teams with industry that will help us to understand the building better, right? Sometimes we collaborate with artists, always with engineers, always with facade consultants, always with a team that will make the building. But in conditions where that requires, sure, we talk with curators, with artists, depending the field that we're doing. Sort of hospital, we'll talk with people that use the space, right? I think it always element that will bring more knowledge into how they will occupy the space, And I think not really linked with the scientific industry, right? We're always trying to understand what's going on with them to really keep on as a technology and ideas keep evolving on all fields, right? Because we're interested to develop in every field.
Thank you, Paulo. So I think maybe we can take a couple more questions.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Juan Antonio.
In my case, what I would like to ask you, I've been following Zaha's work even before studying architecture, and that's one of the main reasons I decided to study architecture. When I found Zaha's work, as you said previously, the early work. So I've always been interested in your design process and your design thinking more than the final form. So, and this ability to shift from an architectural project to a smaller scale project. So my question is, how do you know or get the ability to know once you get the project or that final shape to transform that into a design or a piece of jewelry or maybe a exhibition design? So thank you.
Also, I think we're always, it's always a back and forth, right? I think we sometimes when we start designing a city, right, a master plan, we find in that process an idea that we could quickly think that could become a chair, a sofa, right? So we really migrate that idea and in parallel keep on developing that concept. And I think the other way around, when we start designing a sofa, we could find a feature that could actually work well for an area of the building, for the full form of the building. And it's never just taking the object and making it a product or a building, right? It's always just, it's more the idea that navigates, right? It's the idea that we bring forward, how could then respond to the type of scale of project, right? So it's never just, we like this form, we make it into this product. No, it's always, we like this concept, how could this concept respond to this new brief, to this new city, right? And I think that's what, even though we start with that idea, maybe we always end up with a different condition where we start. And that's where more ideas come, more innovation comes, and that's where that sort of circular way of working in all scales. It's besides being fun, right? You can change from one day to the other, right? It is a way that we can understand concepts, right?
Yeah, thank you.
maybe I'll ask you one more, Paulo, and then in the meantime, if anyone wants to have any other question, I would just like to ask you, like, having been experimenting for, I guess, like 15 years plus, and doing so many competitions and concepts, what is in your view next? Like, what are the next challenges that you would like to take? And in general, like, what's coming next in your agenda?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is it is to keep being innovative, right? It is to keep that we remain at the top of the profession, right? I think there is not a bigger challenge than that, right? I think, and also that we maintain a culture of design, right? That will keep evolving and will allow people like you that join years later from us, right? Or like I that joined many years after the company was built, and we could keep on joining that sort of thinking, right? And becoming one sort of trajectory that keeps on innovating. Right? I think there is nothing more exciting than seeing your ideas getting built, right? Going through that process of development, right? So I think keeping that process as the world changes, as we change, you know, it is the biggest challenge, right? So I think all of us, including me and everyone from the team and everyone in the office, I think we have that challenge in mind. How do we are going to remain being relevant, not only for our lifetime, but we can leave a legacy that will continue driving the industry of construction, of architecture into new limits, right, to new boundaries. I think there is nothing more exciting than having a legacy like that. Yeah?
Thank you so much. We have a question from YouTube. It's a bit of a kind of a challenging one, I guess. The question is like, what would you think about architecture on Mars? Like, I guess more with the new with the news about like us getting into Mars and some of these projects from like Foster's and all the different companies. If you have any kind of vision about architecture in other planets.
Yeah. Well, I think obviously all of our work here has been driven by gravity, right?
Yeah.
I think everyone here works with gravity. So I think the moment you start changing that, everything changes, right? Yeah. The moment you start working with different materials, everything changes. Yeah? So I'm not sure if the question is how we can start building while still living on Earth, or how will we building when we are living in Mars. So I think
the interesting part is the constraints changing, no, drastically.
Exactly, because it could be that yes, we keep sending robots that will start 3D printing buildings there, you know, using the ground from Mars to build structures, right? I think that will be, and then understanding the structural principles of that material, what could we make out of it, right? So I think we will have, same as we work here from country to country, we will have to work there with what's possible to do, right? And obviously, it could be an infinite possibilities of building with a different condition of gravity. Yeah.
Quite interesting. Imagine that also with virtual reality, like the moment that you don't have constraints about construction, how could you imagine like space in the virtual reality? It can also be like drastically, like, you know, opening so many new ideas.
Well, this is. I don't see that as a future. I think that's happening, right?
It's happening. It's happening.
That's happening. I think you already can go to site, put augmented reality glasses, and start seeing the whole building on the side, right? And checking what pipe is clashing with the building when it gets built. I think that's the present, right? I think that's already a very exciting thing to bring the digital into the virtual, right?
Very exciting indeed. Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Paulo. Thank you for being here tonight with us. And thank you everyone for attending. We will continue tomorrow with Sajay with another amazing lecture, more on the kind of fabrication and the work of Zaha Code. Yeah, we will see you next weekend, hopefully, for our reviews, Paulo. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much, Paulo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck on the workshop.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.